Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you. So we're going to come back to some more Swordsoul Tenyi for today's video. I have made some changes to the deck here based on some of the feedback that I've gotten in the comments. I decided to test out some of the suggestions as far as additions go that you were all suggesting there. Of course, we have seen with the recent limited list, banned and limited list change coming up that Swordsoul Strategist Longyuan here, Longyuan, never quite sure how to fully pronounce it, but this card's going to 2 fairly soon, and it's definitely going to be more than a bit of a consistency blow to the deck. It's not going to be too much of one, but I think it is going to, over the course of a significant number of games, you'll definitely notice a consistency drop as far as giving your level 10 synchros out, which really are, in my opinion, the more threatening ones when it comes to Swordsoul Tenyi. It might seem like, oh, why wouldn't they hit like Mo Ye, for example? It seems like the more, quote-unquote obvious hit. But I do think, in the grand scheme of things, that Longyuan, if you're looking to kind of curb the deck's both consistency and power level down a little bit, I do think Longyuan is probably the better hit there in that regard, just because, again, your level 10 synchros like your Baronne, your Chengying, and your Qixing Longyuan definitely tend to be more threatening in terms of presence as opposed to your level 8 synchros. Like, yes, Qixing is very good in that it gets a search and then can negate, but, a 2800 body with a monster effect negate is good, but definitely not like, game ending on its own. Like, that alone is not enough to, stand up against most boards, so... yeah, it's definitely a bit of a blow, but, yeah, so the games that we're going to see here were recorded, like, just before that ban list announcement came out, so we're not going to be seeing, an updated build just yet. I do, of course, plan to test an updated build, and we'll definitely show those games when that becomes, relevant there. Or rather, when I get to that point where I do that testing with a new build, though. For now, we're going to be using the build we see here, though. So, based on suggestions, like I mentioned earlier in the comments, I decided to add 2 Pot of Desires as well as 1 Swordsoul Sacred Summit. I've actually played both of these cards in Swordsoul Tenyi before, but it's definitely been a good bit of time since that's been the case, and... especially the Sacred Summit, I think I played in, like, literally my first iteration of the deck, and then I took it out pretty shortly afterward, and haven't really come back to it since, but, this card can enable some pretty good, not just comeback plays, but also with the right hand, some good turn 1 plays, right? Like, if you're discarding, for example, like a Taia with the Longyuan, and you're able to you opened or are either able to search the Sacred Summit, then you could potentially make it another level 8 synchro by using the Sacred Summit for the Taia once again, and then maybe even going into like a Baxia into a Chao Fang or something like that. So Sacred Summit does definitely open up a decent number of plays, or like even just making a Draco Berserker on top of your like your Qixing and Baronne, right? Even that's like a very, very good play that the Sacred Summit can fairly easily enable. So yeah, I think the card is definitely not bad in the deck, and I don't remember if in any of the games we're going to see I actually ended up playing this card. I don't think that was the case, but it's definitely still not a bad card to have, and I do intend to do more testing with it. I think I'm trying to decide how much more testing I want to do with Desires with Longyuan going to 2. I'm just a little bit anxious, I guess, about banishing both copies there, which I don't think is particularly likely, but is definitely still something to be mindful of. As far as what I took out to fit in the Desires and the Sacred Summit, I ended up dropping, what was it, one of the Adharas. I saw a couple comments suggesting that, with the Hulk Aurora Online no longer being a thing, you don't quite need 3 Adhara, because having the extra tuner on board doesn't quite as often, mean as much, and I agree with that notion. I've definitely noticed that in my own play, so decided to drop in Adhara, and then we cut the Harpies for the Duster as well. And we only cut 2 cards to add in 3, going up to 41. Oh, I wish I could, I should have saved, or at least remembered, who left the comment. It was a regular commenter, but, they pointed out that, it's actually a consistency boost with Desires if you play slightly over 40, as opposed to a consistency hit, like I think I implied in an earlier video, because, the idea is that when you banish a top 10, if you have more than 40 cards in your deck, you're less likely to banish the, like, one-off cards that you might want to keep. So that's a pretty galaxy brain analysis as far as I'm concerned. It kind of blew my mind. I was like, yeah, that's actually a really good point. So yeah, I definitely decided to go slightly above 40. I've done it before, Swordsoul Tenyi. I've played 41. I think I've even played 42 at one point. But yeah, I decided to go ahead and try that out here. Been liking this build pretty well so far. You know, the funny thing is, too, I took the time to reevaluate the extra deck as well, since I was tweaking the main deck there, and I actually decided that I'm actually fine with the extra deck as it is, to be totally honest. I thought about the, you know, I rather not even just thought about, but I mentioned, I think in my deck profile, last deck profile for this deck here, that I considered the Dragite and the third Mug to kind of be placeholder spots. But honestly, there hasn't been too much that I would think I'd want to put in over them. If I had crafted by now the level 12 Synchro, the Geomathmech Final Sigma, I might try that over the Dragite, because to be fair, I have not summoned the Dragite yet. I would try that over the Dragite, but I haven't crafted the card just yet, and I don't know. When crafting like random one-off cards like that, I really try to like look for at least one other deck when I can use it. I'm sure I could find one pretty easily, but none really come to mind at the moment. And I know, of course, I'm sitting on so much ultra craft points, but you know, it's like I always say, I'm saving them for future Lex, right? Because there will come a day where I need those craft points. That is going to happen, and future Lex is going to be very grateful for present Lex, will then be past Lex, for saving them. So that's a lot of the reason why I don't touch them unless I'm like going into a new deck or I feel I can use a card for multiple decks. But yeah, I've been liking the 3 Mug. Been liking the extra deck overall, so decided not to make any major changes at this time. So yeah, that's the deck there. Let's go ahead and break it down card by card, go over the list, and then we're going to take a look at some games. So we're playing 1 Effect Veiler, 2 Tenyi Spirirt Adhara, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Tenyi Spirirt Shthana, 3 Swordsoul of Mo Ye, 2 Swordsoul of Taia, 2 Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous, 3 Swordsoul Strategist Longyuan, 2 Tenyi Spirirt Vishuda, 3 Tenyi Spirirt Ashuna, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Archnemesis Protos, 2 Pot of Desires, 3 Swordsoul Emergence, 1 Swordsoul Sacred Summit, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 2 Heavenly Dragon Circle, 2 Infinite Impermanence, and then 1 Swordsoul Blackout. The extra deck will contain 1 Yazi Evil of the Zing, 2 Baxia Brightness of the Zing, 1 Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, 1 Adamancipator and Dragite, 2 Swordsoul Grandmaster Chi, 1 Chao Fang Phantom of the Zing, 1 Baronne de Fluer, 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Cheng Ying, 1 Swordsoul Sinister Sovereign Qi Xing Longyuan, 3 Monk of the Tenyi, and then finally 1 Shaman of the Tenyi. Yeah, so that's going to cover the deck there. Let's go and take a look at some gameplay. Alright, so this first deck that we're going to play against is like, it's like Numeron Burn Kaiju. It's like this gross amalgam of every deck that you really hate to play against. So this is going to be fun. No, it actually will be pretty fun here. We're going to take the first turn, obviously being a Numeron Kaiju based deck. They're going to want me to go first. Interesting that they're playing a bunch of burn stuff like Magic Cylinders and stuff like that and Secret Barrels, given that though, it kind of seems like that would conflict a little bit with their strategy. But in any case, I'm going to lead here with a Longyuan because I have the ability to open with a Baron before going into my main combo here. That will protect, of course, the rest of my combo. Now, I could have summoned Taia to go for my level 8 Synchro, but I decided to use Ecclesia for the Mo Ye instead, just to give that extra draw, secure a little bit of extra advantage. Definitely does not hurt on the first turn. Plus, I don't mind taking the risk of using Ecclesia now, given that I've got the Baron on the board to protect myself from like an Ash Blossom or Nibiru. I would like to save Baron for as long as possible for a possible Nibiru. So you do have to be mindful of your Baron's negate. Like, I probably would have negated an Ash Blossom against that Ecclesia, but I definitely would have thought about it. It wouldn't have necessarily been a snap play, but in any case, we don't get interrupted, so we were able to open with the fairly standard opening board of Chi, Protos, and the Baron there. Opponent's going to lead with the Galdra, the Mystery Dust Kaiju, and I'm going to pop off the Maxx in response. I typically use the Maxx in response to getting Kaiju'd because, you know, the going second level / rank 8 deck, it's, you know, also kind of known as, was it Danger Luna Kaiju, with the Fairy Tail Luna there. You know, it's not uncommon for that deck to will just be around. Like, I run into that deck all the time, so and it's not uncommon for that deck to drop a Kaiju on you and then special summon their own Kaiju. So also, you know, if your opponent's Kaijuing you, they're probably about to like combo out, at least somewhat. You know, it could be Numeron. Which, I mean, you could pop off a Maxx in response to the Numeron's effect, but long story short, I just think it's safe to pop off a Maxx in response to the Kaiju being put on your field. Most of the time, your opponent just won't do anything afterward, and there's a good amount of the time where the kind of decks that are Kaijuing you like that won't special summon afterward anyway, but, you know, it's happens often enough that I do think it's worth it, so... yeah, after this, the opponent is going to drop a couple of cards face down. Of course, they played the Dimensional Fissure as well. Actually, ended up being another good reason that we popped off the Maxx when we did, because, you know, Maxx has to be sent specifically from the hand to the graveyard. So if Dimensional Fissure is on the field, then it will not be able to be used because it would be banished instead of going to the graveyard. Therefore, you can't pay the condition / cost. Therefore, you cannot use the effect. So, yeah, even though the Maxx didn't get any draws, at least we got, like, some kind of use out of it. So... plus, we got the Nibiru anyway, which is mainly the card we're looking for, although against this particular deck, unless we get Numeron, Kaiju and then Numeron, it's going to be kind of hard to necessarily get this Nibiru off. So, opponent actually had a Blazing Mirror Force face down, and it's funny, when I saw the Kaiju in the Dimensional Fissure, I even remember thinking before I went to battle phase, like, this seems like the kind of deck where they might have a Mirror Force, and they actually did have the Blazing Mirror Force. Which I'm totally fine with in this scenario. This is actually, of like all the Mirror Forces, I think this is the best possible one my opponent could have had, because one, it doesn't clear my Protos, two, they take damage, and I care much more about them taking damage right now than I'm taking damage, because you know, my Protos lived, so therefore it's still going to be able to attack directly here. So if we're going to get Mirror Force, again, this was I think the best possible Mirror Force to get hit with. Now, I could have also potentially, you know, I did kind of risk not playing the Taia first and going for a play like before entering battle phase. Like, I could have summoned a Baxia and spun the back rows, but I think, you know, as I was considering the possibility of like a Mirror Force, I'm also considering the possibility of like a Torrential Tribute. And honestly, I think a Torrential Tribute is much more common, not much, slightly more common than like any of the Mirror Forces. So like, yeah, when you're playing against decks that are doing things that are kind of like weird or like out of the ordinary, it's definitely worth it to consider weird or out of the ordinary cards. So again, when I see a Kaiju, a Dimensional Fissure, and multiple back rows, I'm thinking like, this could very easily be a deck that's playing trap cards that other decks might not necessarily. So I decided, you know, risk versus reward. I didn't want to risk getting Torrential, so I decided to instead take the risk of getting Mirror Force, which I did, but I think this is still definitely playing out better than if my opponent had a Torrential, which they don't, to be fair, but obviously I didn't have that information going in. You don't want to get caught in the trap of making results-oriented thinking. You don't want to be doing that. You know, it's easy to say like, oh, well, your opponent didn't have Torrential, therefore it would have been right to play Taia before going into the battle phase, and it's not necessarily the case because I didn't have that information when I was making that decision. That's like the thing you always have to consider, is like the information that's available when the decision is being made. Because again, if we had perfect information, then yes, we could have played perfectly, but that's not really making much of a statement, right? That's just kind of like stating the obvious, so to speak. So yeah, I'm going to start by going into the Qixing Longyuan here. That way my opponent will take not only burn damage from the main deck Longyuan's effect, or actually they don't, oh, because they didn't go to graveyard, I got banished, right? But I wanted to be able to burn my opponent here, basically, so I did think that they were going to take their damage, which is why I did that. I was intending on, like, kind of ending the game that way, but we're still able to end the game regardless, so yeah, I managed to beat out this kind of nightmare of an amalgam here. They didn't end up doing the Numeron stuff. Like I said, I didn't even realize they were playing Numerons at all before I actually looked at their deck just now, but yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for that duel, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, so this time we're going to be playing a mirror match here. Actually, it's been I don't know, a long time, but it's been a little while since I played a mirror match, honestly, which is kind of surprising with something like Swordsoul. Oh, you can see I've got the Link blue sleeves from the event. Honestly, I love these sleeves. They look so crisp. They look so clean. I love them so much. Anyway, I'm going to lead with the Mo Ye here. Opponent's got a Maxx, but I fortunately have the Ash Blossom here. If they had a Veiler or an Imperm or something like that, I could use the Heavenly Dragon Circle here. And the kind of cool thing is that I'd get to add pretty much any worm monster that I wanted to, because I already have the Shthana in my hand. So it actually would have been a slightly above average response to the Veiler / Imperm play, but they end up not having it. Also totally fine. Of course, I'm still going to gain advantage off of the Mo Ye draw as a result of that. Plus, of course, the Chi Shao Surge here. So let's see what we end up drawing. Ah yes, Maxx. Actually a fantastic draw. Of course I'm going to search the Longyuan here, given that I did not already open it. Pitch the Shthana, go into the Baronne. Not going to be able to end with a Protos, but, you know, Chi plus Baronne is, like, not a great end board. Like, you could do better, but it's not a bad end board by any means either. We, of course, also have the Maxx in hand, and I'll throw down the Heavenly Dragon Circle, just in case it ends up coming up. There's kind of no reason not to set it here, so... it could also be a potentially good bluff as well, but let's go lead with the Desires here. As soon as they Desires, I kind of figured it was probably going to be the mirror match. It's funny because, you know, you might see your opponent play a card like Desires and think like, oh, so many different decks can play Desires. I don't know what my opponent is playing. But, like, when you really stop and think about which decks are actually using Desires right now, it kind of tends not to be too hard to suss out what you're playing against. Like, we know Baronne de Fluer doesn't play it, Swordsoul Tenyi plays it fairly regularly. And then, like, even just, like, glancing at, like, the tier list, you know, there's not actually, because you might get, it's easy to think of Desires as a really generic card, but in this current meta, there's not a whole lot that's playing it, so, you know, I don't think it's too far off for me to guess that I'm playing the mirror match, and I end up being right, of course. I mean, it's easy for me to say as a replay, but I promise you, in the actual game, I was thinking, oh, this is probably the mirror match here. When I saw the Desires. So they're going to follow up with a Feather Duster on my face down. I'm totally cool with that. I'm very happy to trade this Heavenly Dragon Circle for a random card from their hand, essentially, if you want to think of the Feather Duster in that regard. Opponent's going to use the you know, call by response to my Maxx here as I go to use that against the Adhara. And I stopped and thought about here whether or not I wanted to chain Baronne's effect, you know, just kind of weighing the pros and cons of it here, right? Obviously the pro of chaining here is that the Maxx gets to resolve. And then I get to start drawing cards. The kind of con of it, though, is that while there is a chance that Chi will be enough to stop my opponent's plays if they just summon Mo Ye and negate and they pass, that's not, like, uncommon for that to happen here, but at the same time, we do still have to be mindful of the fact that, like, the Maxx might not necessarily draw us into the out. And it, you know, we only have one card in hand, so we're kind of setting our opponent up for a scenario where they could pretty easily just play into our Maxx and just hope that we don't draw the Nibiru. But they actually have a pretty decent chance of getting lethal on board before I get to the Nibiru. So this is definitely a tough call here in this particular scenario. If I already had like a Maxx, or not a Maxx, if I already had, obviously if I already had the Nibiru in hand, I'd totally negate here. Even if I had just like a few more cards in hand, just generally speaking, I'd be more fine with negating here, because then at least it would be more threatening to my opponent, the idea that I might have this Nibiru. But I ultimately decided to go ahead and negate the call by here. I decided the Maxx draws are a little bit more worth it. It's close here. I think it's pretty borderline, but I think there are enough hands, especially given that they have the Adhara. I know the Howkline isn't a thing anymore, but there's still a decent amount of hands they could have here, where Chi negate plus Baronne negate is still not enough, given that they have the 4 cards or 3 cards plus Adhara in hand. So yeah, I am actually going to negate the call by here. Plus, I'm also thinking about it in terms of, like, I do have the Baronne and the Chi on board, so, like, yeah, it's definitely possible for my opponent to, like, OTK me here even through these, but it's not as likely. Just in general, it's not as likely. So, again, I was a little bit more willing to negate the call by for that reason as well. Alright, so opponent's going to get the draw and the Emergence search here. Then activating the Emergence for the Ashuna here, that's right. Okay, so, yeah, at this point they'll go for the Monk, presumably banishing the Ashuna. I'm kind of like wondering, in a way, almost like what they're doing at this point. I don't know, the Chi summon was a little interesting to me. I almost feel like, I'm just trying to think of, like, honestly, I would have done if I was my opponent in that specific scenario. Like, yeah, because obviously they were still able to get the level 8 Synchro out. I really do feel like it's right to go for Baxia here. And then I'd have, what, 2 cards? I'm just thinking, like, they would have had the Longyuan if they would have summoned that in attack mode. 23 plus 12 plus... I'm just assuming they didn't. I don't know. I'm just trying to think for my opponent here, which is something I kind of tend to do in replays when I'm watching them, right? Is I'm thinking, like, even, like, because obviously I have to remove the bias of knowing what I have, but even given that, like, I feel like my opponent maybe should have prioritized answering my board before, like, progressing their own, especially because they're not able to actually, like, you know, win through this. I mean, yeah, as you can see here, they set up the... They also should have put this Vishuda in attack mode, so they could have done more damage to me. But even that still wouldn't have been enough for an OTK here. But they could have just potentially gone for Baxia, given me one draw off the Maxx, and gotten rid of my board. Granted, my one draw was Taia, so I would have had comeback plays, but it would have been more difficult. This Desires was a misplay, by the way, on my part. Total misplay on my part. I kind of just popped it off just cuz, but in doing so, I end up banishing my Mo Ye's as well as my Ashunas, which isn't... I mean, it's not really going to matter too much. I think I actually still have one Ashuna in deck. Oh, I can't look at my deck, but I did banish both my other Mo Ye's, which didn't, like, super matter, but definitely kind of mattered a little bit. It made me have to think a little bit more and be a little bit more careful about what I was actually doing moving forward through the rest of this turn. So, plus I already had so much advantage. There was no need for me to, like, I don't even know what I was trying to Desires for, you know. There was honestly no need for it. So, in any case here, I'm going to go ahead and lead by specialing the Adhara just to get it out of my hand, as well as then the Ecclesia. Well, yeah, here's the thing, right, because I could have Ecclesiated for Mo Ye, since I already had the Taia in hand. Now this Taia in my hand and my normal summon, by virtue of that, is, like, you know, definitely not as useful moving forward. So I'm going to go into a Baxia here, put back the Shaman and the Vishuda. Then I can discard the Taia, since I obviously, you know, special summoned one already. I'm just going to go for the Chengying here. I thought about going for the Qixing Longyuan, but, yeah, I realized that Chengying was a pretty easy win this turn, given just how many cards were banished. Which was a reason to activate Desires. I don't think activating it in general was wrong. I just think activating it when I did was incorrect. I also should have synced for this Chao Fang sooner to play around Nibiru, but my opponent didn't end up having it, so... And then, yeah, by banishing to someone with Protos, we can then use the Chengying's effects to clear the Monk off the board and just swing for lethal. So, yeah, there were a couple of different ways I could have done that, but... Alright, that does it for that duel. Let's now take a look at the next one. So this next duel here is going to be against Marensis, which I've kind of considered maybe dabbling in a bit. The deck seems cool. I like sea creatures. I love the ocean in general. Sea creatures in general are just tend to be my favorite animals. So it's like, yeah, the deck definitely appeals to me. Pretty good going second hand here. Got the Maxx and the Imperm. As well as the, you know, for the follow-up on our return, Desires, Designator, and Emergence. Like, yeah, fantastic hand here. I shouldn't have necessarily... Okay, I actually made a couple of misplays here. One was, I think... I guess I don't know if impriming the Pasculus here was a misplay. I actually don't think that was. I'm really more referring to the fact that I didn't also pop off Maxx in response, because, like, I'd played against this deck in the Link event before. I should have remembered that they have Link ones. One of many reasons to, you know, it's good to know, like, your opponent's deck, generally speaking. You don't have to know your opponent's cards, like, play by play necessarily, like every other deck out there, but if you at least know, like, generally what a deck is playing, like, again, if I had actually applied that knowledge that I had, I could have been like, oh, I need to Maxx in response to the normal summon of that monster as well, because they have Link 1s, they're just going to go into their Link 1, so that way I can get a draw here. So I do actually end up missing out on this draw here when they go into the Sea Angel, but yeah, I figured that I could just pop off the Maxx in response to the dive once they went ahead and added that, so I'll go ahead and do just that. So yeah, like I said, we missed out on one draw with Maxx, which is a little unfortunate, but definitely not the end of the world by any means. And yeah, they'll just set one card and pass, presumably just not wanting to play into the sea. Drawing Mo Ye and then Shthana, definitely not awful draws there. Shthana could have maybe been a little bit better, but the Maxx and the second Emergence are not the best draws in the world, however. Opponent's going to Imperm the Mo Ye. Unfortunately, we don't have the Heavenly Dragon Circle, so I did actually have to stop and think about this as well. This was definitely a decision I had to make of whether or not I wanted to Crossout Designator the Infinite Impermanence here. Because I did think about, like, oh, what if I just let it resolve and then add the activate the Emergence for a Longyuan and then make my plays that way, just to play around Nibiru a bit. But I ultimately decided to negate the Imperm here because my hand is not super great and I really would like to make it better with the Mo Ye draw here. So I decided it was worth the risk here to kind of hand sculpt a little bit. Opponent's going to pop off a Maxx in response as well, so now it's kind of turned into like, okay, I guess we're just going to have to win this turn. I mean, we're already planning on winning this turn anyway, but definitely is also going to make the Nibiru risk a little bit more threatening here. Alright, so we'll use Mo Ye and the token to, of course, go into our Chi Xiao, fairly standard to open with that there naturally. And gonna get our search as well as our Mo Ye draw for that little bit of extra advantage that we were looking for. And Mo Ye is gonna draw us our third emergence, which is, you know, great, fantastic. Gotta love it. I'll use Longyuan. I could definitely pitch one of these emergences here. That's a-okay with me. Like I said, I plan on ending the duel this turn. And we actually managed to go into Baronne before the opponent drew into their presumable Nibiru. I actually don't remember when looking at their deck list if they had a Nibiru in there, but it's suffice it to say, it's pretty safe to assume, right? So yeah, special summon the Protos, managed to call water, so that's definitely very nice. Now, even if for some reason we don't win this turn, our opponent's not going to be able to do anything with all these cards in their hand during their next turn, but yeah, they don't have anything, so we're able to swing in with everything for lethal. So GG's there to the Archnemesis player. We've got one more duel. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Oh, this duel. I'm actually really excited to show this duel. This is a duel against Crystron, which I've never played against. Of course, we all know Crystron Halki Fibrax, but I never played against like an actual Crystron deck before. So like, props to my opponent for being bold enough to ladder with Crystrons like after Halk got banned. And yeah, I don't really open any responses, not that I knew at all what this deck does, but they're just going to end on this Citrate a couple of back rows and pass here. I can deduce, obviously, from reading the card's effects that they're going to try to go for a Synchro Monster on my turn. I'm not, like, super sure off the top of my head what it's going to end up looking like, but we'll go ahead and see here. They're going to Maxi in response, so this is going to be yet another scenario where I'm just kind of looking to win the game this turn. Going to go into Baronne ASAP, make sure I can negate that Nibiru there. Of course, going to burn them with the Longyuan effect here as well. Ecclesia is going to net me this Mo Ye here, and I actually haven't normal summoned yet, which is definitely something to keep in mind as well. I mean, I don't actually think it ends up coming up that I haven't normal summoned at this point, but you know, it's something you just in general want to keep in mind and keep track of. And actually, you can of course always click the information thing here to see whether or not you've normal summoned. Opponent's got a Valor for the Chi Xiao, which definitely hurts. Was planning on actually searching up the Taia here to go into, well, just obviously more synchro plays. And then of course we end up drawing another Mo Ye off the Mo Ye, so what can you do though, right? At this point, the opponent's going to make their big synchro play for a level 4 synchro monster, actually, the Quandax here, which can't synchro stuff from the grave like Citri can, so I'm able to make the Monk of the Tenyi here, and I'm going to use Vishuda to bounce this Quandax here back to the extra deck and try to go for lethal. Try to go for lethal, but the opponent's got emergency teleport. I am going to activate Baronne's effect to just try to push for lethal, but their other back row does happen to just be that imperm, so no luck there. They are actually able to prevent us from ending the duel on this turn. So now I'm just like, kind of like, huh, alright, well, now not only do I not have lethal, but now my opponent's got they're gonna have a total of 9 cards going into their turn, so it's like I decided to just kind of like kick back at this point, and I'm like, you know what? I've never played against Crystron. They've got 9 cards. Let's see what they end up being able to do. They're gonna lead by impering my Chi Xiao, which is gonna obviously take away any form of disruption I have whatsoever. So at this point, I'm just kind of like, again, like I said, just sitting back and watching. Next play they're going to go into is for the Cherubini here, and I think they actually managed to set up the adventure engine of this Cherubini here, which is like I'm just sitting here like, whew, I didn't realize that was part of Crystron's playbook. Of course, I am, like I said, I'm not familiar in any way, shape, or form of even what the playbook looks like, let alone what all, like even like pre-Halki Fibrax, let alone like post-Halki Fibrax, so. Yep, sure enough, like I said, they're going to set up their Griffin Rider here. One thing I am noticing is that, like, all their monsters, like, well, they are getting a bunch out, like, I'm still feeling relatively safe because I'm still at 8,000. I've got, you know, they can't get over my Chi Xiao and Baronne right now, even if they've negated / forced me to use them already. They're still not able to necessarily battle over them. But then, of course, when they start going into this synchro summoning here, I'm like, oh, okay, now things are getting a little bit scary. So here's the Coral Dragon, using the effect to pop my Baronne. And then Draco back to get rid of the Chi Shao. So, like, yeah, I ended up losing a bit more of my board than I thought I would. Just based off of my opponent's plays here. Next going for level 7 for Samurai Destroyer, which I'd never seen before this duel here. It's an interesting card, but I'm just glad that it's actually not a card that's going to end this duel here. I thought for sure, yeah, my opponent was going to end up playing some other monster that was just going to, like, yeah, destroy my monk and then swing at me for lethal, but no, they actually just end up 400 points short of lethal here, so, and then of course after setting up their card, they'll give it back to me. Now, I draw Maxx right on time, of course, and they're going to pop off a Maxx in response. That's fine. I don't really intend for this duel to ideally go on beyond this turn anyway, so I'll lead by specialing the Ashuna while I can, and then specialing the Ecclesia, using the effect. Opponent's going to chain the Ash Blossom. I don't have a response for it, so that's just going to have to be fine. But I do already have the Mo Ye and the Sacred Summit, so I'm not like super duper scared of what my opponent's necessarily going to do. They do have the Griffin Rider though, so that's going to negate the Mo Ye, which is definitely going to be a bit of a problem for me. I actually kind of, you see my graveyard? I'm wondering if I should have considered playing the Sacred Summit first, maybe? If only I'd had a Taia engrave, honestly. But alas, you know, I am actually able to get a little bit creative here, and by using this Adhara as well as the Secret Summit to bring back my Longyuan, I'm able to go for a Yazi. Now I can use Yazi to pop itself, and I want to pop the Adventure token, but I'm not. Just trying to figure out why this was immune to card destruction, because I thought the. Let's see. Yeah, it would be destroyed by battle. Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought that Fateful Adventure only protected from destruction by battle. I'm sure there's just some... Oh, no, it's because the Cherubidi's pointing to it. That's what it is. That's what it is. I knew there was some small effect that I don't normally think of that would be the reasoning there. Is, yeah, the Cherubidi. So I should have tried... So I should have not tried to. I should have popped the Cherubidi. Yeah, opponent's gonna throw down a Wandering Griffin Rider once again in response to this, but they obviously... are going to be too late to actually negate the effect, so I'm just going to go ahead and take advantage of this and, you know, use my free, or get a free Maxx cycle, rather. The Blackout looks a little promising if I'm not able to end the duel this turn, which is not looking terribly likely will be the case, but we'll have to see after I battle here. End up battling over the Cherubidi, but then, yeah, when I go, oh, you know what, the Crystalline Impact, we actually knew they had this card, that's right, because I remember them showing it to us and setting it. Alright, yeah, we do end up pulling out the Heavenly Dragon, or using the Heavenly Dragon Circle, rather, to pull out the Ashuna from our deck. Yeah, the Ashuna from our deck for the direct damage there. So that's like 400 to 500, super close. I'm just going to make a Chao Feng, because that's pretty much the most, I guess, powerful card I can make at this point. And then naturally, like, I'm going to throw down the Blackout as well. Yeah, so as you can see, the opponent just kind of went like boom, 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 and flooded the board pretty quickly here. They're actually going to end up going for a Baronne. I was kind of surprised when they sent away the token. I was like, wow, already? But then, yeah, they summoned Baronne. I was like, oh, nope, that makes sense. So, yeah, at this point, yeah, Baronne can pop his back row, and then everything just swing at me for lethal. So that was definitely a very close game. There were like a couple of moments where I was like super close to winning, but the opponent ended up managing having... words, the order of words is so weird sometimes. The opponent ended up managing to have a answer pretty much to all the stuff I was able to do, and then extend into their own plays as well. So definitely kudos to this player again, taking Chris Strawn's post-Talkie Fibrax. That's honestly pretty rad, and I'll even honestly go so far as to show their list here, just because I'm sure some people will be asking, like, what did their list look like? I'm interested, and yeah, here it is. Take a look at it. So, yeah, I think that's going to go ahead and just about, I guess I'll just not bother cutting. Usually I cut this transitioning back to the deck list out, but I've just been talking this whole time, so I'll just leave it in, I suppose. Yeah, no, thank you very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. I definitely greatly appreciate that, and I greatly appreciate those of you who are commenting and subscribing as well. Comments, as always, ever, definitely feel free to let me know what you think of the build and the gameplay, and just what you think of the videos and channel, I guess, as well, in general. I very much value everyone's feedback. You know, I have a great I have a great comment section in general. You guys are very good at like constructive criticism, and I very much value and appreciate that. So thank you again very much. And yeah, subscribing, not only, like I said, a great way to support the channel, but will also notify you of when my videos go live, which does happen every day. So you do have daily Master Duel content to look forward to when you subscribe. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for this one. So without further ado, this is Hexlux signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.